Luke woke up late, as usual. The sun was already blazing when he stumbled downstairs for breakfast, rocking a hoodie from some designer brand that cost more than his friend's entire paycheck. As he nibbled on a fresh croissant, courtesy of the family's private chef, he scrolled through his phone, party invites from his squad, pics of a new club in Dubai, and a credit card alert. He swiped it away instantly. Money's boring, he thought, shrugging. His friends, like Mark and Claire, were always talking about financial planning or the stock market. At the last pool party, when Mark brought up internships, Luke just laughed. "Why work when you can live it up?" he said, cannonballing into the water. Everyone cracked up, except Claire, who shot him a side eye. "One day you'll have to wake up and smell the coffee, Luke," she muttered. He pretended not to hear. Across town, Edward, Luke's dad, was buried in paperwork at his office. By the time Luke even rolled out of bed, Edward had already crushed 32 emails, fixed a logistics nightmare at the company, and skimmed contracts. His coffee sat cold, forgotten. He stared at a framed photo on his desk, Luke at 8 years old, grinning at an amusement park. How did everything get handed to him so easy? Edward wondered, rubbing his tired eyes. That night, Luke rolled up to the party in an awesome sports car, laughing with randos he'd probably forget by morning. They clinked champagne glasses while Edward stood alone on his balcony, staring at the city lights. "What if I'm not around tomorrow?" he whispered, picturing Luke clueless, stuck with a light bill he couldn't pay or a contract he couldn't hustle. Edward knew he had to do something. Not another lecture. Not cutting off the cash flow. Something that'd show Luke the real world, not just talk about it. But how do you teach value to someone who's never needed a thing? Edward watched Luke through the office window. The kid was by the pool, cracking up with his friends. "He doesn't even know I'm here," Edward thought, adjusting his glasses. But today wasn't just another day. Today, he couldn't stall anymore. "Luke," he called, trying to keep his cool. "We need to talk." Luke strolled onto the terrace, still dripping in his surf shorts, like he'd just walked off a beach in Malibu. He plopped into a wicker chair, legs sprawled like he was chillin' at the beach. Edward wondered, for the 1000th time, how that little rock-collecting kid turned into this carefree dude. "What's up?" Luke asked, eyes glued to his phone. A video of a sports car revving blasted at full volume. "Your future," Edward said, leaning forward, hands clasped. "What'll you do if I'm gone tomorrow?" Luke snorted like it was a joke. "Dad, we've got 3 houses, a private jet, how many employees again?" "Like, 50. Money doesn't just vanish into thin air." He waved his arm dramatically, nearly knocking over the juice the housekeeper had just brought. Edward took a deep breath. He remembered his own dad ranting about the value of hard work, while teen Edward rolled his eyes. "Life's a loop. Money disappears fast, Luke. Blink and it's gone," he said, pointing to the skyline where office towers glittered. "All that could turn to dust if we don't handle it right." Luke stood up, stretching like a bored cat. "You've been binge-watching the news again, old man." Relax, we're golden. He gave Edward a slap on the shoulder and bounced off, already booking a VIP Uber on his phone. Edward stood frozen, listening to the car's engine fade into the night. On the desk, next to his cold coffee, was a paper he hadn't shown Luke, a report on the company's debts. Red numbers screaming for attention. He thinks money's a fairy tale, Edward muttered, shoving the document into a drawer. But the only trick left is me disappearing for a while. The next morning, Edward barged into Luke's room without knocking, something he'd never done. The room was pitch black, thick curtains blocking the sun. "Get up. We're going for a ride," Edward said, tossing a jacket onto Luke's unmade bed. Luke rubbed his eyes, groggy. "Right now?" "It's 6 a.m., he whined, but he dragged himself up. After all, his dad never woke him before noon. The car stopped in a neighborhood Luke had only ever seen from behind tinted windows. Narrow streets, pop-up stalls under faded tarps, the smell of fresh bread mixing with exhaust fumes. Edward parked outside an open-air market where a man in a wrinkled shirt stacked bananas into a wooden crate. "This is Mr. Michael," Edward said quietly. "Starts work at 4 a.m. yesterday, he sold 30 crates of fruit. Made $150. Luke stared at the man's hands, cracked, scarred, gripping a dirt-smudged water bottle. "And, he does this every day?" Luke asked, fiddling with the gold chain around his neck. "Every single day. Even when it rains." Edward nodded toward a kid hauling crates. "That's his grandson. Helps after school." Luke's stomach twisted. $150. He'd spend that much on VIP drinks in 10 minutes at the club. Next stop, a sewing workshop the size of a closet. 2 old-school machines clattered like broken engines. An older woman, gray hair in a messy ponytail, stitched a blue dress. "Mrs. Martha," Edward greeted her like an old friend. "She makes 5 dresses a day. Each sells for $40. Luke glanced around. No AC, just a rusty fan. Walls stained with mildew. "Doesn't she get tired?" he whispered, watching her hands fly over the fabric. Mrs. Martha smiled, as if she'd heard him. "You get used to being tired after a while," she chuckled, a gap in her teeth. "But this? It's my pride. Every grad who wears my dresses comes back to thank me." On the drive home, Luke stayed silent. He stared out the window, but now he saw things: a delivery guy balancing 3 orders on his bike, a mom juggling grocery bags and a toddler's hand, an old man selling candy at a stoplight. Edward didn't say a word. He could tell the gears in his son's head were finally turning. The next morning, same drill. Edward stormed into Luke's room like a tornado, yanked the curtains open with a dramatic whoosh, flooding the room with sunlight. "Up. Now," he ordered, tossing a plain navy button-up, no logo, the kind he'd never be caught dead in, onto the bed. "Office in 20. Luke squinted at the shirt. "Is this a joke?" he groaned, scrubbing his face. "I'm not your intern." "Today you are," Edward said, arms crossed. And no breakfast in bed. Move. The company building felt alien without its usual VIP event glam. The lobby reeked of stale coffee and printer panic. Employees hustled past, clutching folders and half-empty to-go cups. A woman in neon glasses typed so fast her keyboard sounded like it was screaming for mercy. "This is customer service," Edward said, pointing to a dusty desk in the corner. On it, a landline from the 90s, a monitor that wheezed when turned on, and a notebook labeled complaints. In angry Sharpie. Luke snorted. "You want me to answer phones?" he asked, like Edward had just asked him to wrestle a bear. "Start there," Edward said, slapping a badge with a photo from some wild party years ago, sunglasses, cowboy hat, zero chill, on the desk. It read, "Luke Smith, intern." "This is embarrassing," Luke muttered, but he slumped into the creaky chair. First call came in 3 minutes. A lady yelling about a diaper delivery that never arrived. "What do I even do?" Luke hissed, muffling the phone, eyes wide at Edward. "You figure it out," Edward said, walking away. By 11 a.m., Luke had promised a 50% discount, without approval. Given a delivery guy the wrong warehouse address. Accidentally ended a call with "Bye, babe," to an 80-year-old man. "See? I suck at this." Luke whined, tugging his hair. "Messed up?" "Fix it," Edward said, dropping a bitter black coffee on his desk. "Do it again Monday." Monday? Luke nearly spilled the coffee. At lunch, he watched employees scarf sad desk sandwiches, eyes glued to the clock. No one talked about yachts or Coachella. They talked about daycare bills, car payments, and maybe buying a new couch next year. A girl named Rita showed off pics of her cat and offered him a homemade brownie. Luke said no, but smirked, his first real, unposed smile all day. Monday's alarm blared at 6 a.m. like a jackhammer. Luke chucked a pillow at it, but the thing just would not stop. Who even invented mornings? He grumbled, zombie walking to the shower. When he saw the wrinkled button-up he had to iron himself, almost cried. At the office, Rita, his new work BFF, dumped a stack of files on his desk. "Sort these alphabetically. And don't mix invoices with contracts, okay?" she said, pointing at 2 piles that looked identical. Luke stared at the files like they were written in Klingon. "Alphabetical is A, B, C, right?" he asked, playing it cool. Rita smirked. "By the client's last name." "Good luck, newbie." Tuesday, he messed up coffee. "How?" 3 sugars for the department head, who was diabetic. "You tryin' to kill me, kid?" the guy growled, dumping the coffee in the trash. Wednesday, Luke mixed up 2 clients named Martha. Sent a birthday gift basket to Mrs. Martha, the seamstress, instead of Mrs. Martha Johnson, the big-shot investor. Result? Mrs. Martha got fancy chocolates. The investor got a note saying, "Happy 80th, Grandma." "You're a walking hot mess," Rita laughed, fixing his disaster. Thursday, he learned deadline wasn't a suggestion. Waited till the last minute on a report, his computer crashed, and he had to write it by hand. His handwriting looked like a drunk doctor's scribble. The boss yelled, "Is this a document or a ransom note?" But on Friday, something changed. An elderly customer called, complaining about a delayed delivery. This time, Luke didn't promise a discount. Instead, he took a deep breath and asked, "Could you give me the order number? I'll check it personally." He rushed to the warehouse, searched through boxes for 20 minutes, and finally found the missing package. When the customer thanked him, calling him a polite young man, Luke felt a strange warmth in his chest. Was it pride? On his way home, he stopped at a diner and saw the price of a juice, $12. Before, he wouldn't have even noticed. Now, he did the math. That's 10% of what Mr. Michael earns in a day. He bought water instead. By week 3, something wild happened. Luke woke up before his alarm. As he laced his kicks, no complaints, he realized he was low-key hyped to fix a problem. A client had praised his patience yesterday, and he wanted to crush their order ASAP. At the office, Rita clocked the upgrade. "Did you take some adulting pills or something?" she joked, tossing him a pack of mints. "Just avoiding another dumpster fire," he shot back, grinning. That afternoon, a pissed client called about a late delivery. Old Luke would have bounced the call or lied. New Luke jotted down every detail, stormed the warehouse, and dug the lost package out of a dusty corner. When the client thanked him, Luke felt that butterflies in his stomach vibe. First time someone hit him with, "You actually mattered here." His first paycheck came in a plain envelope, $1,000. Luke stared at the cash, shook. "This is, for a month?" he asked Rita. "Are you serious?" "That's great for an intern," she snorted. On his way home, he passed the fancy sushi spot where he'd drop $500 like it was Monopoly money. He paused, scanned the menu, and cackled at himself. 2 months of grind for one night here? Ain't worth the hype. Back at the mansion, Edward was in the garden watering plants. Since when? Luke walked over, hands in pockets. "Dad," he started, chewing his lip. "How'd you do this for 30 years? Edward killed the hose, side-eyeing him. "Do what?" "This. The daily grind. Even when it's boring as hell." Edward leaned on the fence, staring at roses Luke never knew he cared about. "Ain't about liking it. It's about showing up. For the work. For the people." He turned, and Luke saw something rare, his dad's eyes glossy. "But it paid off. 'Cause today, you showed up too." Luke didn't hug him. Smith guys weren't exactly huggers. But he gave Edward's shoulder a solid thump, and Edward nodded back. That was enough. Edward was in his office, shuffling through old company photos, when Luke walked in, no knock this time, wearing a crisp button-up and coffee-stain-free shoes. "Sit," Edward said, trying to play it cool, but his eyes were low-key shining. "Got something for you." Luke glanced around. No complaint files, no spreadsheets from hell. Just that wall clock that's always 5 minutes late. Edward slid a key across the desk. Small, silver, with a faded sticker labeled Room 304. Your new office. Well, closet, he corrected, smirking. It's the size of a broom closet, but it's yours. Luke picked up the key, turning it in his hands. He remembered grabbing the keys to his dad's sports car at 18. That one was easy. This one hit different. What am I supposed to do in there? He asked, trying to sound pro. Figure it out, Edward said, leaning back. But start by cleaning up. Last manager left boxes of 90s paperwork in there. Luke laughed. Paperwork. A month ago, he didn't know a file graveyard from TikTok. Now he owned one. That night, instead of hitting up the club, Luke went to room 304. Opened the door to exactly what Edward promised: dusty boxes, a scratched desk, and a view of the parking lot. But there was a blank whiteboard on the wall, perfect for scheming. Digging through a box, he found a dusty envelope. Inside, photos of old employees. One showed young Edward holding a Salesman of the Year trophy. On the back, scribbled in pen, first bonus, bought mom's meds. Luke sat on the floor, back against the wall. He remembered dropping $10,000 on a birthday bash to impress people he'd never see again. Now he held a faded photo that felt priceless. Back home, Edward was in the garden. This time, Luke didn't overthink it. Dad, he said, holding up the photo. This trophy still around? Edward glanced over. In storage. Why? I kinda want one, Luke mumbled, scratching his neck. Edward chuckled, a rusty sound, like he hadn't used that muscle in years. Then you'll have to earn it. That night, Luke flopped onto his bed but didn't turn on the TV. Instead, he searched for online business courses. As the page loaded, he caught his reflection, messy hair, dark circles, but a quiet smile. Lookin' like Dad, he thought, and for once, it didn't sting. Luke stared out his window at the city lights flickering like fake stars. Before, they'd scream, "Party here." Now, he wondered how many people under those lights were grinding, hustling, building something. Money? Still in his life. But now he knew the cheat code no one tells you: real luxury wasn't about money, it was understanding what truly matters. And that? Credit cards can't buy that. Luke discovered that true wealth isn't measured by money, it's built through hard work and understanding value. Want to improve your English while exploring meaningful stories like this? Subscribe now for weekly chapters that blend language learning with life lessons. Share your own journey of growth in the comments below, we'd love to hear from you.